Hi everyone, it's Eileen here. Now I wanted to talk about stress and the post-viral cycle. And the reason that I'm doing this video, I've had quite a lot of inquiries and getting a lot of feedback from people who at the moment are suffering from a sort of post-viral from COVID, or they've maybe had long-term M.E. And I've also people who are actually having a kind of post-viral thing even after the vaccine. And because I'm someone who over 30 years ago was diagnosed with severe M.E, I was also diagnosed with fibromyalgia, and I'll get into a little bit more to explain, so I'm kind of completely honest with people. At 19, I had an incident where a dentist accidentally put mercury up a root canal. And within a couple of days, it was literally, I think it was within something like 40 hours or 36, 24 hours, I can't remember exactly, but it was very, very quickly. I can come down with the most severe type of, what appeared to be like a severe flu, right? But this was a flu that, my goodness, I mean, I've had lots, I'm someone then after that would get flu type things all the time, quite severe flus, and I had swine flu and things. But this flu was flu, and then I had lots of other things. I went paralyzed, I had all sorts of strange symptoms. But initially, when a doctor came in to see me, they had to come in because I couldn't do anything for myself. I was just told it was a very, very severe flu I had. Now, later on, now I am 51. That happened, so that would be 22 years ago. I'm sorry, it's 32 years ago. My story is not always straightforward because there was a few other things. I had a rare medical challenge from childhood. I was also bitten by something at 14. And about 5 or 6 years ago, I got testing abroad, and that's a long story, which would actually imply there was actually Lyme's disease, and that it was late stage now Lyme's disease that I had. But one of the things that happens, ME can come with Lyme's disease because it's like a bacterial, these things are like viral and bacterial. But all of the symptoms that I had were very much, and I actually also, just unfortunately, I also had Epstein-Barr. So you can imagine, so there was the post-viral from that. So I'm someone that totally understands the post-viral thing. It was something I studied so much about. I was used for clinical research. I spent a lifetime, and I mean, the last 30 years of my life doing everything I could to help my own recovery. And even though I had other complications, I met many people along the way and supported a lot of people along the way with their condition. And there was quite a few things, and that's why I'm doing this video. There was quite a few things that I know if I had done very early on when I had these symptoms, that would have made a huge difference to my recovery. But I made some very, very bad mistakes, and we were at a time when these conditions were not understood. I was at a vulnerable age, and there was a lot of things happen that meant I didn't get the right advice, and I made lots of wrong decisions and tried to fight against the condition and the problem, and that caused a lot of devastation for me. And I think it's so important that when you have any post-viral type thing, or I'm going to talk about post-fatigue type things, because post-viral, I'm using that just because a lot of people have particularly asked me about in relation to actually having COVID or after the vaccine. So that's why I'm saying this, but I am not saying this as a medical practitioner. I am saying this as someone who has been on the other side of it, and someone who actually, I was someone who my own GPs would actually get in to speak to other professionals, even when medical students would come in, they would get me in to talk about it because I was so knowledgeable about these things. I was someone done a lot of research. I was always proactive. I was always also fortunate to be friends years and years ago with a woman who'd actually started Action for M.E many years ago. So I had a lot of insight into different things. But one of the things that I became, really passionate about is stress, and I really get into stress management. And that's what I'm going to talk about today, and how much certain things that you do not think about and you may not think are stress or anxiety, but how certain things will keep that exhaustion or that viral cycle going, and other things that you might not view as stressors. And I'm talking about things that may be toxic. These are all stressors on the body. So it's not just about mental stress and emotional stressors, but it's physical stressors, okay? So this is, I'll be honest, I'm going to be honest with you, this has been something that I quickly put together just because of time. I have wanted to create a course for people, but at the moment, I just thought this would be a good starter. If people are needing, support, they can contact me, and I'll definitely look at creating a program or offer people one-to-ones. But let's look at, and just for generic kind of talk, we'll call it this, I'll refer to this as the post-viral cycle, but we can also call it post-viral fatigue. I have to emphasize, because sometimes people put things like M.E and all that, and they just assume that it's viral, but actually nowadays, your chronic fatigue syndromes and things like that tend to get all labelled together, and they're not always associated just with viruses. I know people, as I've said already, who've had past like malaria vaccines and things like that, or not malaria vaccines, or had malaria, or had vaccines in relation to going to, sorry, I have to correct myself there, I've got a bit of brain fog tonight doing this, but I've had people who've maybe had treatment for malaria and they were ill after that, but also maybe people who'd vaccine. Also, sadly, a lot of young girls I know that ended up, after the HPV vaccine, ended up with a kind of what appeared to be like a post-viral thing. Why this happens, we don't know. I have a few ideas why it might, but that's, I'm definitely not going to say that I'm a medical expert on this side, but I'm someone that studied a lot about this. So I do have a certain amount of knowledge. So what I want you to think about is when we get any sort of virus, right? There's lots of things that will make someone be exposed to a virus and actually get ill, and someone who doesn't, or someone who's mild symptoms and someone who doesn't. And if we look at it from a holistic perspective, right, we're all completely made up differently in relation to our DNA, genetics, also what we're going through at that period in our life, what our lifestyle's like. There can be lots of factors, right? But for example, maybe at that point, those days that you're exposed, or whatever that time you're exposed to a certain virus, you may be running about and doing a lot for people. You may maybe not have ate as well. Or you may have had a physical injury, some sort of trauma. Anything that has some sort of impact in the body will make you more compromised, and that can really shape how not just us getting the virus and it actually fully, going on and getting into the body and taking a certain form, how severe we get it and how quick we recover from it. Okay. Now, my case is a wee bit different from most, because as I said, the condition that I had as a baby is now classed they're not sure. It would appear as if it's something that's pre-congenital, but also there's a lot of kind of now research saying that this condition also can cause by vaccines, interesting enough. But I got this, it started to develop as a baby, but they couldn't really diagnose it till, because it was something that was forming, it was bone and tissue problems with my face, and other things. And I had that, and then as I said, I had been bitten by something at 14, different things wrong with me as I was a teenager, but it wasn't until this mercury incident happened, and the next thing I come down with this severe flu, and I went from, which is very common in a post-viral type thing, but I went from someone being very fit, and what I mean is, and maybe fit is not the right word, but I was very active. So I was the type of person, I had 2 jobs at the time. I walked quite a few miles each day. So I would walk to the train station, to the bus station, because I had quite a few things to get to the job that I did. And I did the same coming back. And then I'd walk at night to go to my boyfriends or my friends at the time. And I had a part-time job, and I was also singing in a band. So I had quite a lot going on, and when I got I was also staying, I wasn't at home, I'd fell out with my parents, so there was a bit of stress, right? So I got this flu type thing, and I'll be honest, I was naive, so I didn't associate the mercury thing, even though the dentist who discovered what had actually happened to me was horrified and said he couldn't believe what happened to me. I didn't really put the 2 together until later on. I was very young and naive. But for me, the biggest mistake I made, and I think most people make with when they get a virus in modern today, is that we do everything we can to recover quickly. And when you get quite a serious virus, or you get a virus that disables you in quite a big way, right? What we've got to understand, that our body, the more that we can get into a passive, and don't take this the wrong way, this is not about lack of motivation and giving up, but what I mean is that we go into the rest period in the body gets to recover, but that's not what usually happens with most people today. So we're going to look at, so if you think about, a virus will take more hold if you've got a poor immune system, if you've got compromised health, if you've got a poor diet, if you've got stress, if there's difficult relationships, you're putting a lot of pressure on yourself, there's lots of things going on at the time that is going to compromise. So what we call, when people get certain diseases or viruses, we usually say that there's something else that makes the body more compromised, okay? And when we look at lots of viruses, why do some people get something more severely and get really sick, and lead to, really serious complications? There can be things like, there can be obese, inflammation in the body. It can be that their diet's really poor, right? It can be they've got pre-existing conditions. It could be that, again, they're just under a lot of stress and there's a lot of negative energy going on with them, and they're in a state of fear. There can be lots of things that can contribute to that, how it takes hold in the severity, as I said. But if you go to, now if you see up here to your right, I have frustration and resistance. If you think back decades and decades ago, and even you think about 100 years ago, when people got viruses, some of them would actually spend months resting, right? So there was a recuperation period. But we live in a lifetime that it's like almost society has a certain expectation that within a certain period of time, you're supposed to be back at work and you're supposed to do this. I must do this. I need to do this, as if there's something wrong. I have to be honest, that was the biggest thing that caused me problems. I actually struggled to walk down stairs, right? I really struggled to do simple things, but I was misunderstood at the time. A lot of people didn't realise how ill I was, and they didn't realise I was trying to push through it, which pushing through a virus type thing when the body's active and exhausted, you're pushing the body into adrenal fatigue. You're putting a lot of pressure. So basically what happens if you are denying what your body is trying to tell you it needs, you're in a state of frustration and resistance, right? You're not trying to rest for recovery, but that is what you're supposed to do. Okay. We are in society so used to doing rather than being that's how recovery can be very difficult sometimes in these situations, or why some people don't recover. Now, I'm not saying it's the whole picture, but if you think then if the person has other things going on, they may be a hormonal imbalance, again, they've not been eating, they've got other things going on, there can be lots of things and genetic. But if you keep battling and are frustrated and annoyed that you're not better quickly enough, guess what? You're going to do exactly the same. You're going to get into your frustration. Resistance is going to create more stress, more anxiety, more fear, which often is part of what makes a virus take hold anyway. And I don't mean it's just not the exposure, but the fact that the level of what it'll take on the body. Obviously, like everything, some things tend to are more serious than others, and it depends. But when you are frustrated, when you are resisting and trying to deny something and don't want it to be there, you create anxiety and fear, and you trigger the stress response, and the stress response, is that anxiety, it's further anxiety and fear, and it creates a loop. But it also, when you start getting into the stress response when you're ill, what happens is you're pushing your adrenal levels to again unhealthy sort of, it's like it starts causing imbalances in the body. You start having increased inflammation. We have stress hormones that are there, and they're fine for little how could you say, spurts when we need them. But if we push our body into constant stress or anxiety, guess what? You make the body more exhausted, more inflamed, and you cause an imbalance. And that's why a lot of people end up with a lot of kind of adrenal fatigue type conditions. Now, I have to add, because I've come across through the years a lot of practitioners who use terms to describe things which are not always the same. It's just their naivety because they're not experts in that area. I've come across a lot of people who will put post-viral fatigue and M.E, exactly adrenal fatigue, and that's not quite. Adrenal fatigue can be one symptom within certain diseases, right? Just like there used to be a term called tired all the time, but tired all the time didn't mean, it could be the person was anemic, it could be vitamin B deficient, or they could have adrenal fatigue, or it could be something else. It could be just a poor diet, right? So we have to be very careful. There's also sometimes people get it's just to do with stress and trauma, and they get adrenal fatigue. So we have to be careful sometimes, and just so that I'm trying to be clear for anyone watching this, that sometimes some of these terms are used very loosely. I'll give you an example as well. When I first got, initially, my first diagnosis was post-viral, and then I was classed as having M.E. And the reason I was classed as M.E, that I had so many different symptoms, and it went on for so many years. So I was classed as having M.E and having it quite severe, because I was large periods bedbound, and I could hardly do anything for myself, could hardly walk. So nowadays, a lot of these terms are very different, and a lot of things are pushed together, and there's a lot of debate. But the key here is that what we've got to understand is that certain things can trigger this type of response. They can trigger the adrenal fatigue. But for this discussion, I'm going to focus most on a post-viral type thing. Okay, so you get that stress, And as I said, that leads to more stress, and it leads to the body to get into more inflammation. Stress causes muscle tension, pain. And there's lots of things kind of chemically can start happening in the body for all sorts of reasons. One thing that they're still not quite sure about, and this was something that happened with me, was people develop a problem of not being able to detoxify. Now, there has been a lot of research abroad, and there is there certain people who are more prone to do with genetics to have problems detoxifying. So are they more prone to have certain types of post-viral or M.E and fibromyalgia type things? Because there seems to be an issue of the way that the body gets rid of lactic acid and build up in the body, right? I mean, this took me a long time to realise that it was detoxification was a huge problem. And actually, probably the biggest realisation was about 5 years ago, when I had done, through the years, a lot of what they call chelation. Sometimes people call it chelation, and it's to remove like toxins. And it's something that you really have to be very, very careful with. I've went to lots of experts, and even the experts, when they've done it with me, made me quite ill. It's something that has to be done very carefully. But I done this program, and I lost quite a lot of teeth, and it was quite. I ended up with also I had a period with sepsis, and I had threatened sepsis again, and a lot of infections. And what I realised after that was, with me, detoxification was a huge problem. And what you've got to understand is, if the body is under a lot of stress, and there's lots of other things going on, and you can have other things, maybe genetically, as I said, and there's a lot of even metals in the body, right? Your body then, stress makes us tight. Stress causes inflammation. It does all sorts to the hormones, right? And then pain leads to more stress, okay? And then what can happen, all sorts of things start happening in the body. The body loses levels of oxygen. And that's why it's really important, when you're trying to treat any post-viral or these type of conditions, that you try in some way oxygenate the body. Things like beetroot juice are very good. That can really, I find, that. And I have an infrared sauna type thing, which can be good for the detoxification, but it depends on what stage you're at. I have to be saying, I'm not going to go into all that now. It's a wee bit more in deep depth. But what you want to do is, you want to make sure that you are eating a clean diet. And I mean, some people might find this, oh goodness, but believe me, this helps. You want a sugar-free diet and a gluten-free diet, and as much raw food as you can have. I find juices and smoothies really, really help me. Having mostly a raw diet as possible can really help me, or having things like soups and things like that. You want to have, stay away from processed food, things that are in packages, right? And as I said, the dairy and the sugars and things like that. A lot of people think they eat a healthy diet, but if you're including processed sugars in any way, that can feed, and that's a whole other thing. Gut health plays a big part in a lot of post-viral things, but again, that's another thing. But if we think about stress as, I say, the muscle tension, right? So muscle tension causes pain. It can lead to, again, chronic pain. It can cause you ended up pulling muscles, right? Having all sorts of pain that sometimes is crazy, the pain that we can start creating in the body. That causes us to reduce movement, and it can make us less active. So we've got a catch-22 with post-viral, and this is where it's very, very, everyone's individual. More pain, reduced movement, and less activity, it leads to less energy, right? And it leads to, sorry, I don't know if you can see this, just because my screen, and poor sleep. And the sleep can also be affected before in this cycle. It can have started, even if you're really exhausted, some people can be really exhausted, but during the viral stage. And at the after, the post-viral, can struggle to sleep. And that can be lots of reasons. It can be the level of stress, the anxiety. It can even be just because the body has got caught up in the stress or anxiety cycle. It can also sometimes be bacterial, if the person was exposed to bacterial or has been taking stimulants, or if the body is struggling to detoxify. There's lots of things going on. But the key here is you want the body to get into relaxation, right? One of the things that you have to learn to do when you have a post-viral illness is you're the only person that will be able to find out what you can do, right? That does not lead you into the cycle where you end up even more ill, right? And one of the best things that helped me, because I fell off the wagon so many times because I was a highly motivated person who found it difficult to sit back. And I remember getting a book, and it was by a Dr. Daryl Hoyen, and I can't remember the book, but it was a really good book, and it was about kind of like pacing. And what he would describe is that when you are recovering from a post-viral illness, right, you are basically, it's like a bank balance that is in empty, right? So if you're in empty, you need to restore the energy first. It's like you're maybe minus £100 or something. You might even be minus £500. So you have to restore the bank balance and give yourself some reserves before you use up any energy. But what happens is most people with post-viral, at the post-viral fatigue thing, are actually running on empty. They are running on empty, and they're running in depletion, right? And what happens is if they do get better, they're not, or if they feel a little bit better, they're not still restoring the bank balance, they're still at zero. It's just because they feel a bit better than what they were before. And what also can happen is the way that adrenaline and cortisol work in the body, and the way that things happen, we can have little dips where we think we've got a lot more energy. That was a big one for me. And believe me, I made some really horrendous mistakes, thinking as soon as I got a little bit of energy, I would try and do something. And it was only the closest people would see the horrendous results that would happen. I remember one year going on a holiday with some of my families, and I was older, and I really shouldn't have went on this holiday because it wasn't the type of holiday that was really suitable for me. But I had a relapse for 3 years just because of that holiday, right? And you have to gauge that some things it's like 2 days, or sometimes it can take 2 days for the effect. It's almost like when you go to you exercise, that it's not the day after, but it's the next day, and then you can really feel that. So it takes a little bit of kind of experimenting, but being honest with yourself and understanding your boundaries, and not trying to catch up with the way that you had been pre-viral, pre-viral virus. Because, and what I mean is, it doesn't mean that you're not recovered to that, but part of the recovery is getting back into a state of balance. But most people, what happens is they try and go back to normal right away, and they're in this empty bank balance. So their body's still struggling. It's taking a wee while to recover. So if you do too much, you're going to keep going back into the pain, and you're going to have more or less energy, and you're going to poor sleep. But also, some people get caught in the loop that at a certain stage, they are fit to do a little bit, even a tiny amount, right? But they don't know how to do a little bit without doing too much. And that little bit keeps the body moving, which helps move energy, also helps moving trapped trauma in the body. Okay, so you want to keep the, even if you can hardly get up and you just want to stretch your hands and move and whatever and do that just to keep the energy flow, that helps. But it's a fine line. It's a fine line. And one of the things, sadly, that it's took the medical profession at least 30 years to, and it's only been the last couple of years that this has come out, is that there was a lot of at one point they would do certain types of CBT, and it wasn't, was it called pacing? I was used for one thing and it made me really ill, but it was telling people to do something a little bit and then do more the next day and then more the next day. That doesn't always work with post-viral. People can end up pushing themselves right back. You have to go do a little bit and find out if your body recovers from that. So again, it's thinking like the bank balance. So you might do a little bit walking and you think you've only spent £10, but actually you realise the next day that the amount of energy you used was £100. Okay, so that's a good way to look at it. But go back to the less energy and poor sleep. That can lead to, when you've got less energy and you've got poor sleep, what is that? That gets annoying, right? So if you're not getting good sleep or you're so tired you're sleeping all the time, again, what happens if you, because we're not naturally, nobody wants to bill, nobody wants to have to spend a certain amount of time in bed and rest. But the big lesson for me was that it took me many years to realise that I had spent a lot of time in frustration, even if it didn't appear on the outside. There was frustration underneath. There was maybe sadness, resistance, a bit of anger or stress. Okay, and what does that do? That leads to more pain, more stress, worry about recovery, and worry about future. And then guess what? You're back. When you worry, you recover about future, you have a poor immune system, you've compromised health. And guess what else? When people are in anxiety or stress, they're fed up, they can end up having a more poor diet, make bad decisions, more stress, maybe have difficult relationships, maybe have stress because they can't get back to work, and it becomes a cycle. Okay, so managing your stress and managing your frustration is one of the most important things when you have post-viral. But I think for me, I believe that awareness of your resistance then leads to you seeing the whole stress thing and anxiety thing in a different way. It's a resistance to what is actually happening to us that causes that further stress and that further frustration. And I remember, years ago, I did a lot of work with people at post-viral fatigue, and one of the biggest things that most people did not want to hear was, I would say to them, you need to take more time out, and they didn't like it. They just wanted to go back to normal. But I remember saying to them, do you want to be like me? I ended up having about 7 years of my life very, very swell. I could hardly do anything. And I said, if someone had come back and said, take 1 year out, now I'm not saying that you take 1 year out, right? But if I had took, for example, when I was first ill, I was trying to get better within 12 days and trying to push downstairs when I could hardly walk. Where if I had maybe gave myself another week, right, and another 2 weeks of rest, I would have fully recovered, right? That's hindsight, but I believe I probably had a better chance. And then also all these dips I had, what was I doing? As soon as I had a wee bit, I would be back again, okay? So the post-viral cycle is complex, and every single one of you will be different in how it started. It might be the same virus, it might be the same thing, but you will have lots of other things going on in your life, and you'll have different things going on in the chemical composition of the body. You might have different fears, anxieties, and you have different things that all will impact this cycle. But my advice to you is become aware of your resistance, learn how to relax, learn how to manage your stress. And if that is something you need help with, you can do one-to-ones, or you can even, pop me an email. I have lots of little courses and programs that can really support this cycle. And as I said, I'm going to try and create something for, to support people. It's just at the moment I'm quite busy, but I will be trying to create something for people to try and just help them make healthier decisions after a sort of post-viral, a post-viral condition or post-viral fatigue that maybe, a time that maybe you're struggling with. But the key here is I also know many, many people that have had post-viral fatigue and also even had severe forms of ME and recovered, right? Many of them didn't have all the complications and other things that I had, but they made big breakthroughs. Now, I went from someone I never ever completely recovered, but I don't think, obviously later on I just realised it was because it wasn't all ME with me, I had other things. But I remember after the 7 years where I was really ill, I managed to be self-employed, and for about 15 years I was able to go out and do most things, and I'm not saying I could do most things, that's maybe wrong, but I had some sort of normality back to my life. I still, certain things I couldn't do and whatever. But during that period, I have to be honest, when I look back now, I realise it was that I was in resistance. I was in the fight or flight response. I was in the survival response. I was so used to, from a young age, being ill and having to fight, because I had lots of circumstances where I wasn't even given basic benefits, because at that time, having an illness like that, nobody understood it. It was regarded as all in your head. So I had a lot of other battles that thankfully today it tends to be more easier. But the key here, as I said, is be kind to yourself and recognise it's okay when you have a virus to take as much time as you need. And it is important, very, very important, for you to listen to what your body needs, not what someone else needs and what someone else thinks you should be doing or shouldn't do. That was the worst thing that I did. I listened to people around about me who weren't maybe gauging the situation well enough. And I mean, and some of that included family who years later ended up heartbroken when they realised how ill I was and what maybe, I'm not saying they can, but they did contribute, it's a contribution because I was influenced by people around me. That was my responsibility. But I allowed people around about me to influence me to think it was all in my head, so I'd push my body to the extreme. Your body is your antenna, it's your GPS system. And for lots of reasons, our body gives us signals to what it needs. We live in a very strange time where we are not taught to, we're taught, to be very disconnected from our body, very disconnected by our intuition, very disconnected to what our body really needs. And, we listen to many of these, outside voices, when the reality is most of us should be actually going inward and really connecting to what our body really needs, and making more healthier decisions and a holistic perspective from what we consume, what we mentally and emotionally say to ourselves, and how we deal with things in life. So bye for now.